Okay. Hey, appreciate you guys coming back. I was asked this time to talk about something that a lot of people like, and that's dinosaurs. How many people here like dinosaurs? Okay, how many people are terrified of dinosaurs? Okay, some of you raised your hand both times. I'm not sure if that counts, but all right. But we're going to talk about dinosaurs and the Bible, and you wonder again, why would we talk about dinosaurs when we're in church? But how many people here have heard the idea that dinosaurs roamed the earth over 65 million years ago? Okay? Yeah, a lot of people have heard that, but you see, if those millions of years are true, then that stands in opposition to what the Bible clearly tells us. Because if evolution is true, then we descended from a fish. Is that what the Bible says? No. And if evolution is true, there's no God needed. Adam and Eve would just be a story because we came from ape-like creatures. Noah and the flood would be a myth, that God didn't write the Bible. And if all that is true, then man is just a more highly evolved animal. And guess if that's true, then who determines the truth? Right? We do. And isn't that what our culture does? So I hope you can see why it's very important. However, we're going to use the Bible today as our starting point. The Bible says that God created, okay, not evolution, not over millions of years, all right? And we're going to use what's called a biblical worldview. So does anybody here know do you guys know what a worldview is? Okay? You know, for example, I can tell you that in the back row there's a man. Well, wait, just a minute. I'm pretty sure it's a man, but I can tell you if that is a man, he has no eyes, no nose, and no mouth. I can tell. But wait, hold on. Oh, I was wrong. He does have eyes, nose, and mouth. He's a very handsome man. However, nothing changed about him, did it? What changed is the way the light got to the back of my retina. It was refocused with these lenses. So you see, a worldview is kind of like glasses. And we can look at dinosaurs through two different kinds of glasses, through evolutionary and biblical ones. If we look at evolutionary glasses to see dinosaurs, we'll of course see millions of years of death and destruction. As I mentioned before, we'll see evidence of things like cancer. But again, we're going to use the Bible as our worldview and as our glasses. So we're going to have some pop quiz. We're in kind of a Sunday school type of thing. So if it's school, that means I get to ask you questions and you have to answer them. So first question, pop quiz. What is the name? What is the species of this guy? Triceratops, that's correct. Next question, more difficult. When did Triceratops live? Make it a little easier, multiple choice. Was it 65 million years ago, or during the Mesozoic or the Jurassic? Or perhaps we won't know until we get to heaven. Well, we're going to use the Bible to answer that question, okay? Because the Bible does give us some hints about when dinosaurs, and in particular Triceratops, lived. Because, see, the Bible tells us that in Exodus 20, which, by the way, is the only part of the Bible literally written by the hand of God on tablets of stone, namely the Ten Commandments, it says, in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and all that is in them. Okay? So if the Bible is true, God created everything in 6 days. So it starts out by saying, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, which includes everything. And then he specifically goes through 6 stages or 6 days of creation, creating very specific things on each day. Who here knows what he created on day 1 specifically? Yes, sir. Animals weren't created on day 1. Not yet. That's too early. Now, the heavens and the earth was everything. And then I heard it. Light. Right, and he separated the light from the darkness. He called the light day and the darkness night. Okay? What did he specifically create on day 2? You can do an open book test if you'd like. I don't mind. Firmament. I'm going to call it expanse. Okay, that's using the King James term. And we're going to do a little question and answer after that. We can address why I do that. But the expanse, which separated the water from below to the water above. And then how about day 3? Land, followed by plants. Okay? How about day 4?
Sun, moon, and stars.
Guys, okay, the pastor can't answer any more questions. It sounds like he's got them. That is correct, there are. Okay, how about day 5? specifically, right, swimming and flying things. Right, exactly. And then on day 6, he first created, creatures, land animals, followed by what? Man. Right. Man and woman. All right. So now, we got through that. All right. Now we answered this question. When does Triceratops live using biblical glasses? It would be what? Day 6. Dinosaurs are land animals. Okay. So it would be day 6. However, some people would say you've got to be crazy, because that would mean that man and dinosaurs were around at the same time, not separated by 65 million years old. Do we have any evidence of that? Well, we're going to share some. This is not very scientific, but I do have a Kodak Study Bible, and it kind of covers that. But keep in mind, Jesus said, if I've told you earthly things and you do not believe, then how will you believe when I tell you of heavenly things? If we don't believe what God tells us about how he created, why would we believe him when he talks about the gospel and anything else that's in the Bible? Okay, next question. What dinosaur is this? What species? T-Rex, you're right. A more challenging question, as we had before, what did the first T-Rex eat? Was it meat or plants or both or something entirely different? Now, according to the Bible, some of you were shouting it out and you said plants. We covered that in the first session. Because you see there was no death of animals. That would mean there was no meat. And a lot of you might be thinking, when it comes to dinosaurs, again, you've got to be crazy. I mean, these are killing machines. Look at those sharp teeth. It's designed to kill. And I've seen the movies, right? And I understand your position because I've been in that position myself. But the question would be, was it a Brachiosaurus burger, a mammoth steak, or does the Bible tell us something completely different? Like we talked about earlier today, in Genesis, the very first chapter of the Bible, all animals were given plants for food, and in the verse right before that, man was given plants. So before the fall, there was no death and suffering. So if Genesis is true, then both we and the dinosaurs and the lions and tigers and bears, thank you, would have been not killers, because there was no death. It was a perfect world. Remember, it talks about how the lion and the lamb will live together in the new heavens and the new earth. That's the way it was in the beginning. However, you might be saying, look at those sharp teeth. That is obviously designed to be a killing machine. Or take a look at this species. Does anybody know what species this might be? I mean, those long teeth in the front look like they were designed to hold prey. The teeth in the back are so sharp they could cut a piece of paper. Actually, I didn't say it was a dinosaur. I wasn't trying to trick you. It is a fruit bat. Does anybody want to go out on a limb and guess what the main diet of a fruit bat might be? You're right. This guy's got it. Fruit bat. You see, so in this case, they eat no meat. So sharp teeth does not mean that something eats meat. In this case, it only means what? It has sharp teeth. Okay, how about that? What species is this? Saber-toothed tiger, or maybe it's a deer, which it is. This deer lives in Asia. You can find it today. It's thriving, multiplying. It eats only leaves, berries, and saplings. And if you were to dig up a fossil of this, you would say that's obviously a killer, because you would look at the teeth and you would go, obviously that is. So again, here's another example. Sharp teeth does not mean that something eats meat. It only means what? Has sharp teeth. How about this? I'll give you a hint. It is a bear. It's a ferocious, terrifying. So those sharp teeth, that diet is almost exclusively bamboo. Okay? So again, sharp teeth does not mean that something eats meat. It only means that it has sharp teeth. And I could actually give you hundreds of examples just like this. Has anybody here ever carved a pumpkin, especially lately in this fall season? Yeah, did you carve a pumpkin? What did you use to carve your pumpkin? What kind of knife? Sharp. Sharp?
A sharp knife.
Thank you. All right, now this next picture might make you laugh. But I want you to think about this for a moment, okay? I just gave you examples, and as I said, I could give you hundreds more, where animals with sharp teeth ate absolutely no meat, okay? In the original creation, where there was no death. You know, let's take example. If you got Creation Magazine, you could read this article about this lion. The lion's name was Tyke. A Midwestern farmer thought it would be a good idea to bring a lion onto his farm. However, this little baby lion was not eating any meat, and so he knew it would die. So he called the vet, and the vet actually tried to wean him onto meat by putting 1 drop of blood into its milk, and it would not drink that milk anymore. This lion lived in a full life, never eating meat. Okay, so creatures can live in that way. And in fact, there was a lion in an Italian zoo that would refuse meat, and it would only eat a particular kind of marinara sauce with spaghetti, and the spices had to be just right, or else it wouldn't work. They had to use the recipe just right. I don't know if you've heard of a finicky cat, but that's what we're talking about here. Next question, were dinosaurs on the ark? Well, the Bible actually would give us a clue, because does the Bible say that God brought 2 of every kind of animal except for dinosaurs, or except for anything else? No, it was 2 of every kind brought to the ark. So yeah, they would be. But then that leads us to the next question: how in the world could they have fit on the ark? You know, it seems that Noah has a space problem, doesn't it? But again, we're answering these questions using biblical glasses. The Bible tells us that the ark was huge. In fact, it even gives us the dimensions, a detailed description, which would make it at least 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. And if you can see right here, these are people to give you an idea of the scale of how huge this vessel was. In fact, it was so big it would hold 522 railroad stock cars, which are designed to carry animals. By the way, that would be a train 8 miles long, okay, and it would hold as many as 125,000 animals the size of a sheep. And only 11% of animals alive today are larger than a sheep, so we have plenty of room. So it would look a little like this. And see those 2 right there? Those are the sauropods. Those are the largest dinosaurs in the world. Does it look like we have room? Unfortunately, a lot of people, including not just our children, but people outside of the church that don't know the truth, think the ark looks a little like this. A little giraffe sticking its head out the window, smiling as the birds are flying around. Yet the Bible tells us this was a worldwide destructive event. Everything living except for those things on the ark and the swimming things all perished. It was not a pretty thing. It was a judgment by God. So this idea, basically, we need to get rid of that because it makes it look like the Bible is fairy tales while it is historic. And the evidence for the worldwide flood, as we just touched on this morning, is overwhelming. It is true history, not fairy tales. However, regarding fitting the dinosaurs on the ark, you might be thinking, yeah, but they were so big, you know? It seems that there's a problem there. But you got to keep in mind that only a small percentage of dinosaurs that we found are really, really big, as we have discovered. You know, this is my son's toy T-Rex he had when he was a young boy, and we would have friends over, and he would grab this and push it up into their face and go, "This is life size, this is life size, this is actual size," and he would show all my friends there. But, I mean, is this a actual size T-Rex?
No, it was a baby.
You know, at one time it was. Got to remember, they came out of eggs. They started out small, okay? We know this. In fact, the largest The largest dinosaur egg that's ever been discovered is about 15 inches long, just a little bit bigger than an American football. And out of that came the sauropods that were 45 feet tall and over 100 feet long. Okay, we're talking about they had to have started out small, something like this. I mean, do you think God would maybe bring some stinky old grandpa dinosaurs? And by the way, I wasn't looking at any grandpa when I was mentioning that, but or do you think he'd bring some young pre-adolescent dinosaurs that had plenty of health and growth years and breeding years left so that they could multiply the earth? So perhaps they were the small variety. Even the big ones would have been the young, smaller ones. However, the next question that people might challenge with is how many? I mean, let's say they're smaller, but there's so many dinosaurs. In fact, scientists have categorized up to 700 species of dinosaurs. But Jack Horner, I mentioned his name. He's the #1 dinosaur paleontologist in the world. At Montana State University, he said there is no way there are 700 species of dinosaurs. He said because, like, for instance, these 3 species are all the same animal at different stages of growth. So he has drastically reduced that. However, the Bible doesn't tell us that God brought 2 of every species to the ark. He said 2 of every what? Kind. So the question we have to do is how many kinds of dinosaurs were there? Now I'll explain what a kind is using something maybe that you're more familiar with, and that's dogs. So on the left there is Gibson, who in 2004 was the world's largest dog. And down below, if you can see, there's Boo Boo, who is in 2007 the world's smallest dog. It looks like Gibson's thinking about having a snack, doesn't it? Just a little bit. But interestingly enough, as you know, scientists have mapped the human genome. That was the very first species that dinosaurs mapped the genome. But right after that, the very first thing they did was dogs. Maybe because it's man's best friend. And this is what they discovered. Are you ready for this? That all dogs from Gibson all the way down to Boo Boo descended from a common kind. I'm going to use the word kind, just like the Bible tells us about. Okay? They drew a picture of this animal. It was wolf-like. And yes, your dogs did discern, but they all came down. So now let's apply that concept to dinosaurs. Again, we already mentioned that this is Triceratops, okay? But there is what I'm going to call the ceratopsian kind of dinosaur. So you see the similarities between all these species? Could you see that they could all be related and descended from a common kind? Okay? So that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about, kinds. So there's a study called baraminology, which looks at the different kinds of animals and how they can breed and whether they have fertile offspring. And the scientific estimate is that we would only need about 50 dinosaur kinds on the ark in order to get all of the dinosaur diversity that we have in the fossil record today. So, really quick math, that would be about 100 individual dinosaurs on the ark, okay? And then if they came off the ark, then what happened to all the rest of them? Okay? Yeah, they would have died. And a few of them, and only a few, would have been buried. And if those few were buried in just the right kind of sediment, then they could become what we now call a fossil. Scientists dig them up. In fact, the first dinosaur bones that were discovered and identified as dinosaurs were done so in the 1800s. Did you know that? See, before the 1800s, people hadn't identified what these huge creatures were. As I said, some of them became fossils. We talked about the whole idea of dinosaur being slowly buried over millions of years and then slowly being permineralized. But that stands against the evidence. You know, for example, at Dinosaur National Monument, they find a lot of dinosaurs, almost like a dinosaur graveyard. But some petrified logs, okay, which were also buried, seem to have made a dam in a gully, piling up all these dinosaur bodies at random locations and positions, which we've now found. And along with them, we have fossilized clams. Do clams and dinosaurs live in the same environment? Not at all. meaning that there was something catastrophic that occurred for them to be all jumbled up in one place. And I think the Bible gives us a good clue. That's why we can do it. We already talked about the whole evidence of red blood cells standing up against that, so I'll just go through these real quick. And this is something not to be made little of. It's probably my favorite thing to share with people when I'm on airplanes, talking about this subject. I'll show them the pictures. I told you it's been done about 100 times. Take a look here. This is also dinosaur tissue. It's been done over and over and over again. Even fossilized skin they found. So, does this look like a slow and gradual process over millions of years? Because how could those dinosaur soft tissue be preserved? Or is Noah's flood a better explanation of the evidence and the facts that we see? Going on to some more dinosaur fossils, here we have, on the left is Protoceratops, and on the right is Velociraptor. Velociraptor is inside Protoceratops' mouth, and that's exactly how they were buried. If you were, the matrix was taken away, and this is the exact position that they were found in, almost as if they were in battle. Now, would that position be held for millions of years as it slowly got buried with little tiny layers? Or is this better described as a catastrophic burial that we would see in a flood like never has happened before? Now, there's only about 1,200 complete dinosaur skeletons in the museums around the world. However, there are millions of these. These are dinosaur tracks. Now, if you have a deer track maybe in your backyard, how many millions of years do those deer tracks last? Right. I mean, they're not going to last very long. You could preserve it by getting some plaster of Paris and maybe pouring it into that, and you could actually make a cast of that track. But that's kind of where we get fossils. You see, so these tracks had to have been buried quickly. I believe these tracks are from what we call a hadrosaur. Interestingly enough, these are ripple marks that are showing that there was a quickly moving water going at a perpendicular distance as it planted its left foot, and its right toes were just barely there because it was becoming buoyant as it went uphill. This is evidence of a dinosaur escaping floodwaters. Using your biblical glasses, I hope you can see how this makes sense of the biblical account. Now, we are talking about the Bible, and is the word dinosaur in the Bible? Well, keep in mind, remember, because it's not there. The word dinosaur is not in any English translation. But remember when those first dinosaur bones were discovered. It was in the 1800s. The word dinosaur was invented in 1841. It means terrible lizard, comes from the Greek. So, considering that the English translations were long before the word ever existed, it would make sense that the word wouldn't be there. However, in the original language, in Hebrew, there is a word that occurs in the Old Testament 14 times. And it reminds us of what we might call a lizard with claws, teeth, and horns. And that is the word dragon. That's what the King James used to translate a word tanin, like I said, 14 times. And it means monstrous creature. Sometimes it's metaphorical, but most of the time it means literal. Now, we know dinosaurs are true historically because we find their bones. However, we also know of dragons. And a lot of people think that they're legendary. But did you know that they're historical? Bear with me. They're actually in over 1,000 historical accounts, written historical accounts that span millennia that are on every continent in the world except for Antarctica. Dragons were written about by humans, and their written accounts match what we know about dinosaurs, including artwork, which we'll cover here in a second. Take a look at this guy, for example. This is a real dinosaur. His name is Dracorex. The artist conception of Dracorex put by not a Christian, but by National Geographic, that's a real dinosaur. And if I had hired Disney to draw a dragon, would it be much different than this? But yet this is a real dinosaur. You see, dragons are in Europe, they're in Asia. The history is well founded. There is artwork, multiple artwork that supports St. George and the Dragon, who was witnessed by many people that was who killed the dragon that was about to devour the king's daughter. Might have been an exaggeration, because that's what we men do. We exaggerate things when we slay the mighty dragon. Or here, how about even in this continent, the Native Americans referred to what they called the mighty thunderbirds, which were flying reptiles. That's the way they described them. They even drew them on their cave walls, and I think it's no coincidence that the mighty Quetzalcoatlus lived in this exact area. Going back into England here in the 1400s, Bishop Richard Bell was buried in Carlisle Cathedral, inside, underneath, up on they used to do that inside churches, lovely thought. But carved around the brass, around his tomb was a fish, dog, pig, and bird, as well as this, which appears to be a sauropod with its long neck and long tail. No other animal would match that description. Yet, this was done about 400 years before the first dinosaur bones were discovered. How did they know what a sauropod looked like? How about this? Here's a 4,000-year-old Protoceratops carved in stone. It matches. The one below is the real Protoceratops, but do you see the similarity? One of my favorites here is in Cambodia at the Angkor Wat Temple. If I'm zooming into this one, even young children know what dinosaur that is. What is it? Stegosaur. You can see the alternating plates on the back, the horns, in great detail. This temple was dedicated in 1186 AD, 700 years before the first dinosaur bones were discovered. Biblical glasses on? How did a human know what this dinosaur looked like unless he or one of his ancestors or one of his ancestors had told him or drawn pictures? There are over 100 pieces of artwork of what they call dragons that match explicitly dinosaurs. You can find some of those in our book, this brand new book. If you go and touch it, it's still warm because it's hot off the press. I'm kind of joking, but it's only a few weeks old. It's a brand new book. If somebody in your family loves dinosaurs and they love to name them, this would be a good way to, mix in the science as well as the biblical idea. So we talk about that in there. So, but the Bible actually does say something about what might be a dinosaur. A guy named Job, you remember him? He lived after the flood, and some really bad stuff happened to him, okay? And so he was asking God, why did all this bad stuff happen? And his friends came and apparently gave him incorrect answers. And finally, God doesn't answer him, or at least doesn't answer him directly. He kind of goes through and God tells him, hey, have you looked at my creation? He kind of takes him around and shows him of various amounts of animals that God created and said, could you do this? Can you create this great thing? And he went and described them. And the most time he spent on was this creature, Behemoth, chapter 40. That Behemoth basically means a colossal, meaning big beast. Speculation about what Behemoth might be. There's a footnote in one of the most popular English translations of the Bible that says, well, maybe it's a hippo or an elephant. But let's compare that to a sauropod. So the Bible said that Behemoth eats grass. So does an elephant eat grass? Sure. Hippo? Sauropod? Actually, they are herbivores. But if you went into a museum, they said, well, grasses didn't exist before dinosaurs. Well, that's kind of interesting. And indeed, sauropods did eat grasses. The reason we know that is because the evidence is found in coprolite. Coprolite is a big fancy word that is what? Dinosaur doo-doo. That is right. This is actually a piece of coprolite, fossilized dinosaur doo-doo up here. And what they found in there is that dinosaurs indeed ate grasses that somehow had not evolved yet. Think about that for a moment. The Bible also says that a behemoth had really big bones. Okay, does an elephant have big bones? Hippo? Dinosaur? So far, everything checks out. It said they had a tail like a cedar tree, and the cedars used to build the temple that they would be familiar with that came from Lebanon were huge, really big. So, does that look like a cedar tree to you? So perhaps behemoth is, this colossal beast is maybe a sauropod. In fact, it says at the very end of the description in Job 40 that he could stand in the river Jordan and keep his head above water during flood stage. Now today, the river floods at 45 feet deep. So could an elephant or hippo survive that? But yet a sauropod actually could and keep its head above water and stand against the current. So I think perhaps this is a sauropod. Now getting back to our questions, if they did come off the ark, I mean, did you see them in the zoo last year? No? You know, there's a lot of theories telling us why they aren't there. Of course, you've heard of the great asteroid impact theory. Okay. And by the way, the evidence for that impact in and around the Yucatan Peninsula is pretty difficult to argue with. It probably did happen, but there are problems with that theory. And, you know, it's mainly why did turtles, crocodiles, snakes, and for that matter, mammals survive while only the dinosaurs? The bottom line is we and evolutionists can't know exactly why dinosaurs went extinct and what happened, but I do want to share with you the facts of what we do know that happened to dinosaurs. That's what we know. The Bible would tell us that God created them. There was a flood. Perhaps there were 100 on the ark. But do you think the ice age after the flood, which the evidence is very strong for a 500 to 700 year ice age, not millions of years, do you think that could play a role in the survival of what most people consider a large, cold-blooded, reptilian-type creature? You bet. How about disease? I mean, have other animals gone extinct? Yep. You bet. How about a lack of food source? Would that make an impact? Keeping in mind that the flood would have wiped a lot of things out. So, I would like you to consider another idea that I think is supported by the evidence. And that is, did man have a role? There have been some animals hunted to the point of extinction, and God did, after the fall, and this would have been before the flood, God did give permission for man to kill and eat meat. There are YouTube videos that show men, a single man, being able to bring down an elephant with a single spear. One strike. If you know the kill zone, in order to get it in the right spot, you can bring it down with one strike. So could it be that some red-blooded men, when this dinosaur came coming into their town, maybe walking through their garden, destroying their food supply, could it be that they picked up their spear and saved their garden, protected their family? Because I'll tell you, if your wife screams, "Get that dinosaur out of the backyard," you better do it, because then you're not going to get dinner if you don't take care of it, right? But what about having enough meat to feed the village? And more importantly, going down in history as the one that slayed the mighty dragon. Do you remember those 1,000 pieces of historical dragon literature that's written all around the world? In almost every case, it's the story of a man killing a dragon. So, not Disney, but real. Could it be that that's another leading cause of their death? So, if somebody asks you if you believe in the age of dinosaurs, I'd like you to suggest that you believe in 5 ages of dinosaurs. Okay, they each start with the letter D. One is that God created them in the beginning. The next stage would be when death came into the world, the fall. The biggest disaster in the history of the world was the fall. They would begin to, some of them, kill each other. Then the second biggest disaster of history would be the Great Flood, which would have preserved some of them, and then their extinction, and then finally what we now discover together. So we started with, why do we talk about dinosaurs in church? And that's because they represent millions of years to most people. And we need to have a defense for our faith. And we can actually use dinosaurs as a way of explaining, not just to children and grandchildren, but explaining the history of the Bible, and use them in order to show the truth of the Word. You shouldn't be scared of dinosaurs, okay? We need to have a defense for our faith. You know, if we're out sharing our faith and somebody doesn't believe the Bible's true, which would be representative of pretty much everyone that we find in the culture, and if they have questions, and they do, they have challenges, and if we don't know the answers, it can have an eternal impact. That's why we need to. And by the way, if our kids come home to us as parents and grandparents and we don't have answers, it can have a huge impact on their eternity. So we need to have a defense for our faith. But you know, evolution usually gets credit for dinosaurs, you know, creating, you know, that they came about over millions of years. But I want to remind us that dinosaurs are God's creation. And in the same way that Job eventually did and bowed his knee to the Creator, we need to give the Creator glory for what he created, including in dinosaurs. So, appreciate your time. We'll go ahead and conclude with just a really brief question and answer time if you guys have any. The answers are in here, but I do have 2 rules for question and answer. The first rule is that your question needs to that your question needs to be about the origins issue. If it's about soteriology or eschatology, I'll just refer you to Pastor David. The second rule is that your question needs to be in the form of a question. I'll hold you to that one. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
The D's again, design, disaster,
Yeah, I was going fast. I'll agree. I don't have it memorized, so let's just go back. Let's rewind. Here we go. Come on. Wait. Sorry, I went too far. Hold on, please. Sorry, I went too far. I was pushing my button too many. Here we go. Ready? Design. Disaster, that's the fall. Deluged, that's another word. That's a fancy D word for flood. Disappearance, that would be their extinction. And lastly is their fossil evidence being discovered. Okay. So, any other questions? Yes.
Wait, that way it's on the recording,
So when they fell,
right up in your mouth, so everybody can see it.
when they fell, then there was the flood. Then they were all on the ark. How did they keep from killing each other?
Oh, sure.
They were already, and then where was the food supply?
Sure. Again, keep in mind that about 1/3 of dinosaurs were carnivores. Most of them were herbivores, some of them were omnivores, but for the most part, carnivores were kind of the rarity. We tend to think they all were carnivores because the movies always show them tearing things apart and eating people, and it wouldn't be very scary if they were chasing after us and then skipped by us and ate some strawberries. You know, that's not frightening. So. So first off, but also you got to understand that God did sustain those on the ark. They probably had to be separated. There's no way for us to know, but God could have, you know, obviously sustained them. And so for about, does anybody know how long they were on the ark? About a year. I think it's a year and 7 days. I might be wrong. I actually have it written in my Bible, a year and 5, 6, 7 days. I forgot exactly how long. So about a year. So God, I think, would have supernaturally sustained them in some way. Yeah, because they wouldn't have been the only carnivores. There would have been a few other animals that were carnivores as well. But they can survive without meat. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, when you talked about the timeline, that we have specific things from how many years and that people lived, we don't really have a specific timeline when Jesus created man, or when God created man, and they were in the garden. So could that be an affirmation that people think that could have been a long, long time that people were there, and they're attributing the fact that whatever that timeline is, there's millions of years that they were in this garden.
All right, well, okay, so I understand your question. We actually do know how old Adam was in those genealogies when he had his first child. And so he would have started, his age would have started at the point of creation. So we actually would be able to calculate exactly when the 6 days of creation would be. Does that answer your question, or am I not understanding?
The creation and they created, okay, yeah, no, that does.
Okay.
That would have been at that same time, but we don't know how long the garden was when he said, let's make man in our creation, so nothing was created.
6 days.
Yeah.
The defense, I'm going to jump in here real quick. The defense that I have against what's known as the day-age theory, in that each day in the creation account actually is millions of years, and this is attributed now to what's known as theistic evolution, meaning that God ordained evolution as his way of bringing us to today. The problem with that is if we went through the days of creation, what was created on day 3? Plants. What was created on day 4? The sun. If you have millions of years, plants can't grow without the sun. So it doesn't even make sense from a biblical standpoint that millions of years had to have taken place. But a plant can survive for one 24-hour period without sunlight. And so that's just another little piece of defense. I don't know, you might even have something to...
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that light came on the very first day. And as our friends in Humboldt County know, you don't need the sun to grow certain kinds of plants. At least now we don't need to worry about it. But then, I'm sorry, I digress. But anyhow, yeah, there's a lot of arguments. So I'm going to mention something, ma'am. Your question about how did they survive is specifically addressed in chapter 6 of the Answers book. And the question we were just talking about, 6 days and all that, is specifically chapter 2. 6 days really is the name of the chapter, and it goes into the arguments of the day-age theory and why it doesn't work out. Yes, ma'am.
Plus, couldn't you make the argument that's how we humans track time can be arbitrary? Because the other day I caught a documentary of a different subject, but clocks came up, and how clocks came to Japan, funny enough. Back then, the West, Europe, had 24-hour clocks. But in Japan, they tracked days in 12-hour increments. But even then, those hours weren't really hours. So how we track time, can't part of that be our fault? And where some of the confusion's coming from?
I'm trying to completely understand your question. Let me
Part of
just
it
tell
is-
you why I'm confused. Because no matter
How we
if you
track
say-
time.
Are you saying they had 12
They believe
segments
that-
in the day?
Yeah, they believe the hours were 12 in a day, not 24
Or
hour
12
versus...
segments. Well, then they would have been
And
exactly.
even then, the hours were almost malleable. It
They
wasn't really 60 seconds.
Well, they have to, because here's the thing, is that the consistency of what we call 24 hours, whether you break it down into hours or Mischnigbibist, or whatever you want to call the segment, it's going to be pretty much the exact same time. So no matter what happens, this plant, the one revolution of the Earth is going to be the same time no matter what. Oh, confusion of days versus, there's no, I will just say there's no confusion over the length of a day. There's no confusion over the length of a year. We've got it down pretty close, even to the point where we have to correct for adding 1/4 day every year in order to, because it doesn't take exactly 365 days. It takes 365 and 1/4 days to completely revolve around the sun. So we know exactly to the point where we can set the clocks, and it's been going on for millennia, and the sun continues to rise at, the same time. So if there was confusion, it's not justified, I would say. Okay. Yes.
To Sarah, I would say take a really close look at Genesis 1:14 because it clarifies the purpose of the sun, moon, and stars. it says very clearly that they are for timekeeping.
Yep, true. Mark the seasons and the years. Yes.
So a lot of people nowadays, like a lot of scientists, say that dinosaurs actually had feathers instead of like scales.
Right.
What do you have to say about that, or what does the Bible have to say about
You
that?
know, we briefly discussed that in chapter 19 of the Answers book. But if you go onto our website, which is, okay, we have, because the whole thing of feathered dinosaurs is something that's kind of been more recent, I would say it's really become more and more popular over the last 10 years, and each year it becomes more and more popular. We have videos, we have articles, we have something called the creation.com podcast, which is actually a video as well as you can listen to it. And so we have a whole episode on that. But the bottom line is that the feathers, if dinosaurs end up having feathers, it doesn't just say, oh, Bible can't be true. It doesn't have anything to do with that. However, the evidence for the feathers is pretty clear I mean, what they're talking about is feathers. There are no full flight feathers on genuine dinosaurs. I'm going to say that. None have been discovered. There are collagen fibers, which they say are decayed feathers, yet Disney and their friends and different people, Disney just published a dinosaur animated thing, not like cutesy, but somewhat scientific, and they got feathers trail and they look like they're ready to take flight. That evidence is not there yet, and I'm not saying it will be, but if it does, I'm not going to say, well, I guess the Bible's not true, because it doesn't go in conflict. I will tell you that the difference between, now they do say, and this is their big thing, is that they're saying that birds evolved from dinosaurs. Okay, now, keep in mind that bird hips and some of the structure of dinosaurs is very similar to birds. I'm going to tell you that. There are some really strong similarities, okay? But there are some huge differences. Most birds have hollow bones. Most dinosaurs have big solid bones. A bird lung is a flow-through. They don't breathe like we do. They do not have bellows that as we have a diaphragm down here that, as we do it, it pulls air in and out, and birds don't have lungs like that. Their lungs are completely different. They're unidirectional, and they flow through, because keep in mind, birds have the highest metabolism of any species. And we could just go down the list over and over again. The differences between birds is great. A guy named, I might mess up his last name is Fiducia. I think his name is Andy, who is considered one of the best, well, I'm not going to mess up I want to say ornithologist, but somebody's going to make fun of me because it might not, but he's a bird scientist. Whatever that is. I forgot what the name of it is. But Ornithologist. So at least I was like in the same ornithology, thank you, he said there's no way that you could justify small incremental steps of dinosaur to bird evolution. There's just too many problems with it. And we don't have the intermediate. In the same way we don't have the intermediate between ape-like creatures and man, we don't have intermediate features between dinosaurs and birds. So that was a long answer to a short question. Anybody else? Cool. Well, listen, I appreciated the time to be here today. 1 Peter 3:15, I just want to emphasize that. It does say to always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have, but I didn't give you the last part. If you noticed on my slide, it said ... or ellipses, okay? And the rest of it is, does anybody know? It says, but do it with gentleness and respect. And I've seen far too many Christians take this information that they might learn from Creation Magazine and go to their unbelieving friends and go, oh yeah, you believe in evolution? Well, let me show you. Look at this. Look at the sedimentary layer. Look at this dinosaur tissue. Here's evidence that birds did not evolve to dinosaurs. Let me show you. I'm going to, you're wrong, okay? Unfortunately, I've seen most Christians take that tactic. And here's the thing. Gentleness and respect means that you show respect. They just haven't heard the other side. And if you come across that, what you're going to basically do is saying, I'm smarter than you are. And is that kind of attitude biblically, 1 Peter 3:15, going to bring them to the point where they want to bow their knee to Christ? No, we need to be gracious and merciful to them as Christ was with us. Okay? And it has to do with their salvation. So don't use it as a competition to win and all that. One last thing I'm going to just mention to you guys. I forgot to mention this to the people before, because this is, are you Angie? Angie. Okay, so Angie here. So I met these people at the big Southern Baptist Convention in Los Angeles earlier this year. And what I was doing is I was standing in our booth, and I was trying to be introduced to pastors, and I was able to be introduced to your pastor, and the two of them were walking. And what I did as a lure, you know, how when you go fishing lure, I would say, you ever touched a dinosaur egg before? Because I am the only person that I've ever met that owns a truly genuine fossilized dinosaur egg. It's right here in my hand. And Angie is the only person I've ever met, and probably the only person I ever will met that said, yes, I have. And tell me again, how did you ever touch a dinosaur egg?
My coworker, she has them.
Okay. Does it look anything like this?
Yeah,
It does? And then, if you don't mind me asking, does she know what it's worth?
I have no idea. But she was very adamant, like, the kids can't touch this. This is not a rock. Don't throw it away. Like,
Yeah, I'm very protective of my egg. It's already cracked, but I didn't do that part because it is an egg. You can see the shell. You can see the cracked portions of the actual shell in here. Right down here is what's called the matrix. This is where they chiseled away, and I'm thankful that they didn't try to take it completely out of the matrix because then it could have broken. There is a really nice fissure right down here that if they took this part out, I could see it breaking into two pieces, which would make it less valuable. By the way, it's very valuable. And I'm very nervous about having it dropped. I actually have a small fossil collection back there. I own 4 fish. The reason I own 4 fish is because 2 of them, I've dropped them and broken them. So fish are not worth as much as this. But anyhow, if you want to say, like your pastor's wife, that you've touched a dinosaur egg, you may. All right, you guys, here you go. Just don't drop it.
if you crack that open, is there an embryo?
No. What's happening is it went through a process called permineralization, and that's when the silica content in the sediment, replaces the organic composition. There's different ways to get fossils. That's what most people think of fossils. There's also imprints. There's molds or different ways, and calcification, but anyhow. So if you guys, I don't mind you passing it. I do mind if you drop it. No, I said I don't mind. Go ahead. You guys can do anything. Just make sure I get it back. And I just wanted to let you know Angie is the only person, and I'm guessing the only person I ever will meet that said that they've touched a dinosaur egg, because I was, surprised. Anyhow. Now, yeah, I know. Right, you can say it now. All right, thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for being
Yes.
here.
Yeah, I'm
just-
getting a question here. She said,
Oh, I'm
is there
sorry.
an app? And yeah, I have the app on my phone.
I do, I just wondered if everybody else knew about it.
Yeah, it's got,
All the time.
it's got a little, it's got a little thing that's got our logo on it, which is like a half moon, but yes, we do have an app. So, sorry, I did interrupt you, but.